Our final guest has been a pioneer in the development of our new internet world. He started Vancouver's first digital agency. He created one of the largest user-generated news companies with thousands of citizen journalists. He continues to influence the direction of this industry that is fundamentally changing the way we live our lives. Please welcome Michael Tippett.
Thank you, Sam. My name is Michael Tippett, and I'm going to be talking about the future of work. But before we do that, I thought it would be worth looking at the history of work and getting a little context on just what it is that we are as human beings. And this chart here shows an interesting graph. It is basically, it represents the 2 million years of human history that we have lived in. So as, sort of standard unit Homo sapiens, we've been around for 2 million years. There's a very tiny little sliver on this graph that represents two things. One is the cognitive revolution. And this was the period in time where, although we'd been walking around the world for 2 million years, we never actually figured out how to use our brains. They were just kind of sloshing around in our heads, and we never actually thought. We never figured out how to think. And then something happened. They don't know exactly what, but scientists have determined that something happened, and we were suddenly able to think. So we were able to use language, and we were able to do things like farming. And so 70,000 years ago, we started thinking, and about 12,000 years ago, we started farming. And about 500 years ago, we had the scientific revolution. So we've had a long run at it, and most of it is just basically us kind of wandering around. This is what we did for most of that 2 million years, except with no boots, which would have been even harder. They didn't have MEC back then. It's amazing to think about just the human history we've had. And at the time that the cognitive revolution happened, there were about 5 to 8 million people in the world, and they were a broad array of just different tribes. They had different customs and different practices, and they did all kinds of different things. And so, the thing that I am struck by this human history is that there really is no kind of natural way for humans to be. We spent so much time foraging, we spent a little bit of time thinking, we spent even less time farming. We've had a tiny smidgen of the scientific revolution. We've had, Wi-Fi for a couple of years, but really, human history is very, very dynamic. But here's the thing. I think we're about to see a new epoch in human evolution, right? Because what's driving change now is technology. And what's driving technological change is actually economics. Because we adopt technology because it makes us more efficient, right? But what happens when human beings are deemed inefficient, right? What happens when the robots are actually more efficient at doing our jobs than we are? Well, the robots get the jobs. Now, when you think about a robot, you typically think about hardware, right? But most robots are not hardware. Most robots are actually software. When I wrote an email today, Gmail suggested I respond with this. I had a number of songs that Spotify suggested I listen to. These are robots. These are pieces of software that are automating my tasks. And robots do all kinds of things these days, right? Algorithmic trading is responsible for what gets bought and sold on Wall Street. Computers actually design and write and test and deploy their own code. They produce and pick and plant and process food. They drive trucks. They work in mines. They work in warehouses. These are all the things that we know robots do. They also make sushi, by the way. There's a restaurant in Japan, a chain of them. All of the food is produced by robots, and I'm told it's very good. It's perfect temperature, and it's cut perfectly. It's quite precise, delicious. Robots create art. They write music. Robots even do science. There was an experiment at Cornell University a number of years ago where they took a bunch of pendulums and they had the robot watch it. And so the robot could observe what the pendulums did, and then it could actually make its own experiments and place the pendulum and let it go and see what happened. And within a very short period of time, the robot was actually able to determine a whole bunch of physics laws, including Newton's second law of thermodynamics. And this is without any basis of scientific education at all. They just through observation. Robots are writing entrance exams to universities and getting in. Yeah, I know, if only we'd known. And then robots are grading those papers. So you can upload your paper, and in the time it takes you to get your balance at an ATM, you get your grade and an explanation as to why you did well or failed. So robots can do almost anything these days. But here's the thing about robots, is it's about efficiency, right? So think about Instagram. In 2012, Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, and they had 12 employees. They actually only had 6 employees, but they hired an additional 6 because it was just so weird. In 2016, Facebook bought WhatsApp. WhatsApp sold for $19 billion with 55 employees. WhatsApp transmitted as many text messages as the entire global telecom system in the world, with 55 people. Think about how many people the telecoms employ, right? TELUS is BC's largest company. They have 47,000 employees. So it's this efficiency that's really interesting about robots and technology. But efficiency is not the problem, right? Efficiency is actually what we want. That's why we have the robots in the first place, right? To do more with less. And you can actually see, if you look at the stats, that we've actually seen massive productivity gains, right? So since the 70s, when a lot of this technology came online and offices started getting automated, we've seen technology improve our productivity, something like 107% in that 40-year period. But actual wages have actually dropped in real terms, 13% drop since 1970. So the problem is not efficiency, the problem is income disparity, right? Because the benefits of a lot of this efficiency are accrued by a very small number of people in those organizations. And what happens with this is that if we don't solve this problem, then demagogues come forward and they start blaming the fact that there's the forgotten men and women in the world who don't have jobs anymore on scapegoats, right? We've seen this happen in Brazil, we've seen it happen in the States, maybe we'll see it in Canada. So we have to be very, very careful about understanding the root causes and what technology plays in that role. So it could be terrible. It could be terrible. It could also be awesome, right? Because if you think about it, you think about what we're actually achieving here. If we can figure out a way of preserving that equality in the world where people have enough, that they're not forgotten, that they accrue the benefits collectively from all of this efficiency, we could actually have a situation where we have all this abundance with very little toil. And then the challenge is going to be not what you do with the future of work, but what you do when you're not working.